Yes, it looks like they're kickstarting us off.
So which character is
There's
Candy?
something exciting.
This is really making me panic now.
Which character is Candy?
I don't know. Maybe she has a throne somewhere in the corporate world.
Okay. All right.
Not
That's
in
all
the
from
least.
me. That's all from me. I think we are live. So Brian and Candy, all the best.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome this month's Young Lawyers Mentorship Series. My name is Brian Kambaho, and I'm excited to be your host. Now, last month, we had Sim Katende, and Sim Katende talked to us about establishing yourself in the legal profession. He spoke very candidly and passionately, and for those that missed the video or the audio or the recording, the technical team can share it. And I believe they're on here, they can share a link or they will forward it. But this month, we have none other than Candy Wekesa, who is the head legal at Stanbic Bank. And Candy is here, so Candy will just ask you to say hi to the people that are listening in.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Candy. I hope you're okay with me calling you Candy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. So we know that you're head legal at Stanbic Bank, and we hope that today's interaction will be more of a conversation. So I wanted to ask you, who is Candy Wekesa?
Okay, I think first thing is to say thank you to the organizers of this very, very exciting initiative. It's not something that we took benefit of growing up as young professionals. So I just like to say thank you to the organizers and the people who thought about the mentorship program, because as we all know, mentorship is in short supply. We've not thought about it enough in professional spheres and even in other spheres in life generally. So it's a good thing to be able to put this in place and actually follow through. So thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to share and discuss and also learn from you as young lawyers, because people like us who are about to exit also need to learn from the people who are coming in, because there's a lot of knowledge on that side that we're not aware of, we've not experienced. So thank you very much. I'm humbled. As you said, Brian, my name is Candy. And my surname is actually Okoboy. If my husband were here, he'd kill me because he thinks I'm running away from the name Okoboy. So anyway, I am a lawyer with Stanbic Bank, and as you introduced me, I'm the head of the legal department. But in terms of an individual, I'm just an ordinary Ugandan who has spent a lot of time working for institutions, mainly as in-house counsel. I did my degree at Makerere. I did LDC, and thereafter started working. My first shot was at private practice. So I did a stint at private practice for 4 years. I was very lucky to be employed immediately after LDC. So we finished LDC, and the next Monday I was able to work in a private firm. But I had no contract. I was simply told, if you show up on Monday, you can work and get your dues on Friday. And if you don't show up, we owe you nothing, you owe us nothing, fly away. So I did that for 4 years. And then in that time, also did a number of things which I like to talk about, because many times as lawyers, we think that our options are capped. In that time, I used to moonlight as a radio presenter. Some people know, some people don't. I used to moonlight as a radio presenter, starting with Sanyu, and then went to Radio 1. And the reason why I did that is because I was broke. I was earning a wage on Fridays of 40,000 shillings. 20,000 shillings would go to things like my secondhand jacket that I had to wear and look presentable as a lawyer. And then 20,000 was between my food and my transport. So I was dead broke. I needed to earn a living. I was living with my mom, which was embarrassing, because I thought that after getting a degree and my postgraduate diploma, I should be able to stand on my own 2 feet. So I decided to take a job as a radio presenter, which I had started doing at LDC anyway. So I did that side by side for a long time, and then changed career when an opportunity emerged at the Capital Markets Authority. The authority was new, the industry was new, and they were setting up the sector and looking for people who could be the pioneer staff. So I did an interview, and I was recruited as the legal and compliance manager of the Capital Markets Authority. Brand new sector, didn't know anything about it, but anyway, dived in and did that for another 4 years. Then in the course of that, I applied to do my master's with a Chevening scholarship of the British Council, and I was lucky. I had applied twice prior, and I got it the third time. So I asked my boss very kindly to give me a sabbatical for a year, went and did my MBA at Edinburgh, focused on strategy, and then came back to continue my services at the CMA. After a year, I was promoted to director position, CMA, and everything was going well until my husband got an opportunity to do his MBA at the Wharton School. And it's something that, you know, nobody should pass. So when he left and he was going to be away for 3 years, I said, you know what, let's just do this together. So I resigned from CMA, and everybody thought I was crazy. And I went to be a housewife for 2 years. Wow. And I did that for 2 years, including some volunteer work, because I was going nuts, sitting in the house. You've done the laundry, you've done everything, you've cooked dinner, by 4 o'clock, everything is done. You've done the homework, you've bathed the kids, you put them to bed. And my husband was really, really busy because he was working on Wall Street. And I was just basically going crazy. So what I did is that I volunteered to be a teacher in one of the schools in the States. And I did that for a couple of months. So when we came back, I was jobless and I needed to find my feet again. And so I applied to the Uganda Securities Exchange, who at that time were looking for head of legal. And I passed the interview, and I was fortunate enough to start a 2-year contract with the stock exchange. After the stock exchange, an opportunity arose. I was headhunted to take up a similar position with UAP, which then later became UAP, the group, which is housed in Nairobi. So it was an opportunity out of Nairobi. Took it up and then packed my bags and went to Nairobi for a while, but left my family here, which was heartbreaking. Did that for a couple of years, and then I was asked to consider the opportunity at Stanbic, which I started off as head legal and company secretary. And then as the group, the Stanbic group grew, hived off the company secretary job and then stuck with head legal because of the span of control. Span of control had become a bit too large. So that's in short, that's my career. That's where I am now. I'm 50 years old and basically looking at my next path. I don't know what I'm going to do after the bank, but I'm still happy to be of service as internal counsel for a great brand like Stanbic.
Wow. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you very much. It's really a privilege to have DJ Kandi. I don't know if that was the name you had at the radio station. You didn't tell us what that was. But also that you were a teacher. What were you teaching in the US? I imagine, did you have an opportunity to teach law, or did you?
No,
Yes.
No, Brian. It was so crazy. I walked into a private school, and I just said, you know what, you guys need to ramp up your African studies. Okay, so I had read about them online, and they called themselves international, and they had African studies and all these things. And I told them, no, you have to ramp up your African studies, and I think I'm the person you're looking for. So yes. They said, all right, we'll give you a try. So I went, put together a few lessons, and I took over the African studies class for the equivalent of P5 and 6. So that's what I did.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really a pleasure. Wow, I love that you never sat on your talent, and in there you've always been willing to volunteer. So for the young lawyers on here, I think be encouraged that in this lockdown you can walk to Stanbic and tell them you want to start up something, and Kandi here will be able to help since she has the experience. But just a reminder for the rest of the team, why we are here. It's about mentorship, and Kandi has just told us about her personal life, her journey. So we hope that this mentorship series opens up and the gap between the seniors and the juniors, but also the opportunity to just walk to them and ask them. And Kandi here is a perfect example. We have our president, Fiona Ward, listening in, and maybe she'll tweet us a little later on. But Candy, I wanted to go straight into the legal career. So we know that you started off in private practice and then you went off to do a master's, came back into a brand new field altogether in the Capital Markets Authority and then insurance. So when would you say that your legal career actually started?
Interestingly, my career started at private practice. And I think without the experience of private practice, perhaps I would not have been, I wouldn't have been as well equipped to be in-house counsel as I am. And it really began with an interesting assignment, which was a due diligence consultancy for the government state-owned enterprises in the 90s. If you remember, there was an exercise in the 90s where, through the auspices of the World Bank, government was being advised to divest from a lot of these state-owned enterprises and create regulatory bodies, get out of business, create an industry where the private sector would play, and therefore be the regulator of a vibrant market as opposed to being a market player. So that assignment is what ushered me into being eligible to even make an application when the Capital Markets Authority decided to look for a lawyer. So I would say that my in-house counsel seeds were actually sown in chambers. And it was on account of that consultancy that I did, because, and I'd hate to say it, but there are prejudices as a woman when you walk into private practice. Mm-hmm. And especially in those days, you wouldn't get the kind of reception that people get now. People look at you and feel that you may not really cut it in court and in litigation. And that's just the fact. And I think many of us are victims of that. You're sort of edged out. You are made to feel that you are not quite the resource that they want for litigation. And you're given all sorts of other things to do, including making coffee. They make the coffee and, clients come and they say they want notepads and they want a secretary, and it's always you. Because the view at that time, and I'm really praying and hoping that it has changed, the view at that time was female counsel were not up to scratch. And so I did my bit. I made the tea. I ushered the clients in. I did the minute taking. I did the research, but I never grew to the point, or could not be grown to the point where I would do litigation as my male counterparts were doing. And so when the consultancy came up, it was literally thrown at me because it was that other thing that didn't require someone to go to court. And that became the biggest key for me. It became the biggest platform from which I then was able to take my career forward. Came in as a nuisance consultancy, give it to somebody who is not going to court anyway. I grabbed it. And I can tell you, with that one consultancy, I was able to understand that I want a business degree. I was able to go and work in the States for a while with the World Bank colleagues. I learned so much, and I completely understood what my role could be if it's not in court.
Wow. You touched on something that is very, very key there, that through the work that you got in the law firm, you began to have a passion for business and work that is outside court. But while you were at the law firm, and you didn't tell us when this was, but I imagine it was over 15 years
1994.
ago.
1994.
Wow. 1994.
You were not born yet, Brian. You were not born yet.
I was, but I was in the top class. Nursery.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I joined P1 in P5 in 95 rather. So I wanted you to talk about what got you to now think of going the corporate world. And then maybe a little later on, we'll talk about the transitioning between the private to to the corporate world. But while you were at private practice, you had your eye in the corporate world. What pushed you to consider that, other than the opportunity of the consultancy?
So when I was doing the consultancy, I began to understand the relationship between strategy and law. And it's a very exciting relationship. And I started to work with people who are creating a new industry. You can imagine one of the items that we were to advise on was the Uganda Post and Telecommunications divestiture. Now, I know half or maybe more of the people on this call can't even imagine what UPTC is, but UPTC was your government telecommunications company, one of the entities that was going to be privatized. And there I was with a group of really eminent advisors being asked to think about how do you privatize this, shift that value to the private sector and potentially to the hands of individual Ugandans, yeah? And then create an industry where competition thrives and where government is left with an oversight responsibility. I mean, it was fascinating because the people I was working with could see that there's a lawyer in all those roles. And previous to that, I only had a very blinkered view of what the lawyer is required to do. In any other scenario, I would think, okay, you guys discuss the strategy, give me the documents to look at when you're done. And here I was literally carving out a new sector. So we privatized UPTC. We created the UCC Act. So we drafted a law that gave birth to a sector. That's the sector now that has the MTNs and the Airtels of this world, that has the players that are doing significant things in digitizing our economy, creating a playing field that's as equal to any other sector in the world. And yet I had a role to play in all those things. And it was really strategy. So that's where I began to understand that if, as a lawyer, you embrace and fall in love with strategy, your relevance just expands in terms of the things that you will be required to do. Because when a lawyer sits in the ideation room or in the lab, as we call it, you infuse your knowledge into all those things and come out with something that's very robust, as opposed to letting the business people or the strategists sit in a corner and give you their views to look at in the form of a document that has already been cooked, whose ideas have already been baked. And at that point, you're really more of a detractor than a person who's bringing value. Because at that point, you're saying, this is not legally viable, this is not legally viable, I wouldn't do this way. Whereas you could actually be in the seat, in the lab, creating this and making it legally viable from the start. So that's really where I started to understand the connection between the skills that I have as a lawyer and strategy, and how those two can be used to really create new value. And that's what makes me excited about the things that I do, that I'm in the middle of creating new value every day.
Wow, thank you. That's really profound. I don't think as a young student, we set out to identify where the lab is, but through your experience and what you've just shared, clearly, as lawyers, we have more access to many labs than we imagine. And yours, you chose to join the corporate world to find how to plug in and be part of a long-term solution. But now I wanted to ask, in that corporate world, because we're here trying to understand how can we excel in the corporate world and what should every lawyer know? Now, there are many that are at different stages. They're private practice, they're in-house, or they're thinking how to join in-house, how to plug into that strategy. What would you say is the core of the corporate world, or should I say in-house counsel? Okay. Maybe if you could expound on that, yes.
I think if if I was to advise anyone who's thinking about an internal counsel career, I'd say the first thing you've got to do is change your mindset. You've got to shed off the view that you are less than your colleagues in external counsel roles. And that's what many of us suffer from. We think, I didn't make it in litigation and in a law firm, in chambers, and therefore this is a plan B. And I just like to say, my experience is that this is as much a main meal as external counsel roles. This is not a sideshow. This is not a, this is not a compromise career. It's not. It is as vast and as rich in opportunity as you make it. The first thing I'll do is say, change your mindset and understand the role for its breadth and opportunity. The second piece of advice I'd give anyone who's trying to transition is you need to fall in love with business and strategy. You've got to understand the business and the sector you're in a very intricate way. You've got to understand why you're producing what you're producing. You've got to understand the customer angle of things. You've got to understand the production line. And the third piece of advice, which is key, very, very key, you've got to understand the full breadth of the risks that business faces, or the sector. Because, as I always say, all the risks in a sector come to legal to roost. So that's really where the chicken is. Anything that happens in the organization will culminate into some form of legal or litigation risk if it's mishandled. So the point is to become a risk expert, understand and appreciate that the risks in all the varied facets in your business are your business. And then the fourth thing I would say is that knock on that door to the lab and get a seat. Force your way into that room if need be. Because many times people want to put lawyers in a box, okay? So people are having a strategy conversation, a product development conversation, and the lawyers are told, we'll call you when you need you. People need us at the beginning of the conversation. They just don't know it. They need us, okay? They need us in the process of even crafting the product or service, because along that chain, you're interfacing with laws and regulations. So knock at that door until it's open to you, find a seat at the table, bring that value from the beginning, so that when that product comes out, it's legally viable. When the service comes out, it's legally viable. When that document finally emerges for us to look at, we are not shocked and ask questions that take the idea back too soon. So knock at that door, find a place at the table, and then be resilient. Be resilient, because in an in-house counsel role, everybody thinks the lawyer is trying to take them back, is not being progressive enough. That's why we don't want to talk to these lawyers, because they're going to quote all sorts of sections and the idea will die. You need to develop a thick skin to make them understand you are a friend, not a fool. You're there because you want to foolproof this idea. And that the point is to make sure that everything is right from the beginning, so that when the product or the service or the item is rolled out, we can say that we are covered from a legal perspective, but also because you've contributed to the strategy. You know, lawyers are strategists, but we don't apply our strategy skills, and we limit them to, I will look at the different sections and interpret and come out with a legally viable. So you can also be a strategist, and you can contribute. You can contribute to the ideas that are being put on the table, especially today when we're working in unprecedented times.
Wonderful. Wow. You mentioned the strategy and being resilient and getting into the lab. And I imagine, for example, if we went a bit practical at Stanbic Bank, it's a huge bank. It has 1 billion products every other day. And how do you keep abreast of each and everything? How do you as head legal, or in this case, your legal department that you're in charge of, be involved in each and every of those projects? Maybe you could actually later on share with us what your weekly schedule looks like, because there's a lot of strategy in there. How do you go about it? Give us the practical feel of it.
Okay, so to your first question, how does the legal function keep up with this strategy advisory and what I call working closely with the client? Because my client is Stanbic Bank. I have one client, and that's the bank. How do we do that? We do that in many ways. One, we try as much as possible to be members of each work stream that's working on a project. So from the beginning, one of the people in that work stream is a lawyer. It helps us understand what is being cooked. It helps us infuse our advisory from the beginning. It also helps us understand what the dispute resolution mechanisms should be, should we get to the point when this risk crystallizes from this particular item. Because we've been so intrinsically involved, we understand it. So if something happens, we are in a very good position to advise when the legal risk crystallizes. So membership to work streams that are working on specific projects. The second thing we have done is that internally we've challenged ourselves to be experts in new fields. As you can imagine, the banking sector is one of the most disrupted sectors. So you have digitization, automation. Now we're talking about robots doing half the work and artificial intelligence doing half the work. So the lawyers in the department are challenged to reskill. By reskilling, we mean look at the future of the industry and ask yourself, what will the relevant lawyer look like? And that relevant lawyer is one who's going to be close to data, understands cybersecurity, understands blockchain, understands artificial intelligence and how to use technology to do their day-to-day repetitive work. We have to be comfortable with so many things like, what does it mean to contract on your phone for financial services? What does that actually mean? What is that process? When a bank sells you something over your iPhone, what is actually happening on the back end? When do the terms and conditions appear? Why do they appear the way they appear? Are we breaching any guidelines of the regulator by having a screen of that kind? That kind of intricate knowledge is what we're challenging ourselves to. And therefore, we hope that through those two things, we can work very closely with the strategy of the bank and continue to be relevant as not only value conservers, but value creators, because the bank seeks to create value every day. So those are the two things we do. And in our mind, we need to walk shoulder to shoulder with that part of the bank that is implementing strategy, because we take the view that they can't do that without their legal advisors.
Wow, thank you. Very, 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 very insightful. So what I hear you say is that in the corporate world, it's competitive and you're constantly trying to add value. So I guess the advice that you give to us as young lawyers to be able to stand out in that area is to find how best we can add value. And I know you've mentioned being abreast and constantly reskilling, but are there also soft skills that you think are needed, especially in the corporate world? I know for you as a former radio personality, your public speaking came very naturally, but it's not the case with each and everyone. Do you think there are soft skills that are a must-have in the corporate world to excel?
Brian, we're being told now that the soft skills, or at least a number of them, are the skills of the future. Because your work and my work is going to be done by robots. And it's a fact. Right now, we're already looking at various technologies that will do contract design and execution for us. Okay, so all we'll do is sit in the lab again, decide what clauses we require, and that process will be completely automated, depending on a few things that may change, but basically will be automated. So these skills, the skills that we call soft, are skills that can never be automated. My ability to sit across a customer and tell them what is legally viable for them, or what the legal challenges are in terms of their relationship with the bank, is something that a robot will not replace. So yes, we're being challenged to sharpen our soft skills and to learn negotiation and to learn customer service and to apply, negotiation skills beyond just tussling with a legal issue. Joining the branch teams to sit and talk about a customer's complaint in a manner that resolves the issue. And yet we are coming from a training that loves disputes. We live for disputes. I mean, the dispute must happen, otherwise we're out of business. But, developing soft skills that bring dispute resolution to a place where everybody wins, to a place where the customer is happy, we retain them, and the dispute is resolved. As opposed to our previous thinking, I have a dispute with you, I either win or you win, and we're going to tussle till the end, till the Supreme Court if need be. But the end of that means that our relationship has died. And from a business and strategy perspective, you're not growing the market. You are acquiring and you're killing. So yes, you're right. The soft skills become extremely important. And it's one of those things that we are looking at.
Wow, thank you. You mentioned disputes arising, and later I'll be talking about your relation with external counsel, you being in-house, and your relation with external counsel. But just a little bit about the in-house counsel. There's been a general concern from some colleagues that joined in-house, and they're wondering about the prospects of career growth. Joining as a junior or as a senior at whatever level it is, what is your outlook on the career prospects in the in-house or in the corporate world?
You know what? I think there is a greater scope of growth. And I'm only saying this because we have not transitioned enough in our private practice, yeah? But if we remain the way we are in private practice, there's more scope for growth in internal counsel work than external counsel. And I'll tell you why. Because the market is so dynamic and is changing, and the relevance of all professionals is such that all hands have to be on deck in order for us to survive. Think about the banking sector, where literally tomorrow you will not see a check. A check will be a dinosaur, okay? Everything will be electronic. Even branches will be virtual. We've already started rolling out virtual branches. Think about the scenarios that we're going through right now with a digital identity becoming the key unique identifier for an individual. You know, I mean, we might even get to a place where we're already at a place where we're defining workplace. I mean, you guys don't know where I am. I could be in my kitchen for all you know, but this is my workplace. So think about the things that are changing and the guidance that businesses require to conserve the value that they have while reaching new grounds without breaching laws or regulations and remaining within regulatory ambit. I mean, who is needed there? It's you. It's you, the lawyers. If business wakes up today and says, forget about all the shops we have, we're going to completely go e-commerce. What does that mean? They need the lawyers. You're going to have to convert those agreements into something that's viable for your cell phone. You're going to have to convert all those relationships to something that's consumable in a virtual market. I can't imagine for the life of me that there will be a shortage of things for lawyers to do. Think about the robots and the laws that will require to govern robots. Think about a time when half of your staff will be human and half will be artificial intelligence or robots. What kind of laws do we need? What kind of in-house policies do we need? Does a robot go on leave? Does a robot get remunerated? What is the consequence management when the robot goes rogue? I mean, just think about how much there is for us to ponder and solve in the new world. I can't imagine that is going to be a limited scope. It's for us to take on the challenge. If we remain with the mindset that internal counsel is a post office box for external counsel, then surely your role is dying. And the reason why your role is dying is also because the disputes themselves are declining. I know we talk about cases in court and the backlog and everything, but my experience in the last 6 years, because of the things that we've been able to do in the bank, is that new litigation is dying. I mean, we're getting to a point where in a whole year, if you make 20 new cases, that's remarkable. I mean, we're not gonna survive on 20 new cases, but we'll certainly survive by guiding institutions into the post-COVID business environment. And we will certainly survive if we crack the dispute resolution quagmire. How do I resolve a dispute but keep my customer? Because my customer is being taken and torn apart by everybody, including other banks and fintechs and other people who can do P2P services for them. So how can I meaningfully resolve a dispute and still grow my market share? And lawyers have a huge role to play. I mean, think about technology. You sit here and you want the next loan online. Who's going to advise the IT people? So I think it's incorrect to think that this scope is limited. In fact, this scope is mind-boggling, because what it calls us to do is to really reskill, automate those things that we used to do. I mean, people are drafting wills online, right? I mean, you go and nobody needs us for wills. Tomorrow, nobody will need us for loan agreements or letters of credit. So what are we going to be? We're going to have to reskill and really be meaningful in the kind of value that we're going to bring to these institutions, because we know the institutions are at crossroads. They need to change the way they do business. The whole world has changed, and there's a huge relevance there for lawyers, and young lawyers especially, because you can easily reskill. You can take up some of these areas and really make them your own.
Wow, thank you. You mentioned that sometimes the in-house can be seen as post office boxes for the external counsel. I'll ask you to explain what that means. But regarding the reskilling, now you're privileged to be in a bank which almost interacts with every other sector of business or of the law. But I imagine that you've had to keep abreast with new developments in the law that stretch beyond the bank. So how do you go about that? And then you could tell us about the post office thingy.
So the way in which we are designed, we're designed with several hats. So as a department, we're designed as a chamber also, because we know we don't want to lose that side of the practice. We are in-house counsel, so yes, we are a chamber, and our chamber's arm keeps abreast with new developments in law, and obviously because we are practicing in a legal environment, so we have to keep abreast with those developments. So the chamber aspect of our department deals with that, including new regulations, and also negotiates with regulators like the Bank of Uganda and others on, things that we can put in place to develop our sector and make our sector more vibrant and progressive. So yes, we do keep abreast. I mean, there's absolutely no option but to do that. So there's a chamber aspect that handles that. And then there's the aspect that's your more inward facing function where you're plugged into all the other aspects of the business.
Thank you for that. All right. Tell me about the post office delivery people, the relation between in-house and external counsel. There's usually is a dispute in there, and some will disregard the other. I know external counsel make a lot of mistakes with in-house clients, but how would you talk about that relationship, and what are things to look out for both the in-house lawyer, but also for the external lawyer, how to treat you? I know there are many questions packed in one, but I believe you can respond.
So what we have been able to do is understand what our role is as risk professionals. And that's really important, because when you understand that you are a line of defense, then you can adequately guide external counsel to deliver to you. So you're not just taking matters from one docket to another and then receiving from external counsel back into the institution. You are actually understanding your role as a risk professional. Now, as a risk professional, you need to quantify your risk. It's not enough for in-house counsel to say, we have a bad case or we have a good case. You need to have a very scientific understanding of what your legal risk is. And we have developed a tool that enables us to make that assessment. And the contribution of external counsel in terms of their opinion is only one aspect of that. Why? Because we are intrinsic to the business and we understand our client's business. I understand where my client wants to go. And because of that, I can bring new aspects to this particular dispute that external counsel cannot see. And then that defines my appetite for the dispute. Do I really want to take Brian on this one? Taking into account all the other things I know as a person who is not only a risk manager, but sits with my customer in a strategy discussion, understands its policies, understands where where my client wants to go. And with that knowledge, I can then guide external counsel. I can tell them, on this one, I will fight. On this one, I don't have the appetite. I would rather that we negotiate. These are my parameters. I can also, because of my understanding of the risk that I carry, I can actually go to the finance department and tell them in very detailed terms what they need to put aside for each particular case. And that is important, because if you're contributing to strategy and you are a value conserver, you need to tell people, this is the amount that you need to put aside for your legal risk. This is what will cover you, because you know that that amount affects the results of the institution at the end of the day. So yes, it's important for you to understand your role as a risk manager. And when you do, your relationship with external counsel then becomes one that guides external counsel on the strategy to take for an individual dispute, as opposed to it being some kind of clash or contest. Now, we all know that external counsel is raring to go in terms of a dispute, and they want to make an appearance in court and fight. But a risk management mindset would tell you that there are some fights that are not worth it. And it's only you as internal counsel who is fully equipped with what your risk taxonomy is. It's only you who would be able to guide external counsel on what to do. And obviously help them with other things like, effective witnesses and documentary evidence, etc. But I find that if you if you really understand your role as internal counsel and how it relates to the other aspects of the business, then your relationship with external counsel becomes a very fruitful one, because external counsel also knows when not to waste their time pursuing a matter that is low-hanging fruit for a consent or a settlement.
Someone is asking in one of the chat questions that if you had to do it all again, would you still move in-house or would you remain as external counsel supporting the banking industry, and why?
I have had the most exciting career supporting companies from the inside. And I have understood the knowledge and the insights that you get from sitting inside an enterprise, and what a external counsel may miss, because external counsel only sees the crystallized risk and is limited to what they are fed, and is playing only one role, and that is win this battle and bring us some damages or something of the kind. But as a lawyer sitting inside, I can point to aspects of the business where I played a role and I can see my product. And that for me is fascinating. Unless your private practice is geared towards really helping clients conquer the market, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. I mean, you sit down and you actually see people making calls on the cell phone. And you can see the role that you played in that. You can see the role that you played in telecommunications and how it has now emerged to become something completely different. So I wouldn't trade it, but I would certainly not minimize my formative days when my work in chambers really groomed me for what I'm doing right now. But I find what I'm doing right now is completely fascinating. There are no 2 days that are the same, because I wake up in the morning and Stanbic wants to move in this direction and I have to guide them. And that direction then brings value to the customer. It changes lives. It brings relevance to this economy. It's absolutely fascinating. There's very few things that can compare.
Wow. So is it safe to say that you have no plans of returning to private practice? Maybe not, maybe not. What common mistakes would you say external counsel has made in interacting with corporate clients? Maybe one or two that you think the many external counsel on board should take home.
Yes, I think external counsel must take a keener interest in the business objectives of their clients and not shove down solutions or shove solutions down their clients' throats. I think that's what I wanted to say. It's important to understand where your customer is coming from or your client is coming from, and really understand as much as possible. It's not always possible, but as much as possible, understand their business priorities and see those disputes in that context. Then you really become a valued advisor. And at that point, you can tell your client, seeing where you want to go and seeing where you are right now, I don't think you need to take on that direction. I think you need to take on this direction. So the common mistake that I find external counsel makes is trying to shove down the same solution that has worked in the past, because I argued that case and I was a star. But that may not be the relevant thing for me now or in this particular stage in my business development. So once external counsel is able to contextualize their advice, I think they really become valuable to business. In addition to, of course, respecting internal counsel for what they do, because internal counsel really know the ins and outs of the corporation and can give you a lot of insights to help you fight the matter in court or in mediation, etc.
Wow, thank you. So it's very important that the external counsel understands the business, but more importantly, that they actually respect in-house counsel. I think some tend to be proud and feel like the in-house owe them a favor, which is not the case. All right, the questions are really, really flooding in. There are so many, but before we get to the questions, and I want to give an opportunity for people to actually raise their hands and speak to you directly. What would you say are some of the challenges you've had in your career in the corporate world? But also if there are any failures that we could take to learn from, it would really be important.
I tell you, Brian, I've failed many times.
Uh-huh.
I have failed many times. I think in terms of failure, if I look at all the times that I failed, I think it's because I became complacent. I became comfortable with the state of affairs. Because in-house counsels spend a lot of time building structures and putting in place frameworks that, as I said, conserve value and create new value. Okay. And at some point, and I think it's a human thing, you stand back and you say, oh, what a beautiful thing I've put in place. And then bang, bang, you get really hit. And I think that for me is the one mistake I will share with any young lawyer and tell them, you know what, we do well as professionals and as lawyers, we do well. But the moment you become complacent, you're likely to fall into a ditch because the landscape is changing so fast. So we have to remain on our toes. And there's just absolutely there's no mercy for lawyers that get it wrong, you know? I've just come to realize anybody else can get it wrong. When a lawyer gets it wrong, it's like, oh, the world has ended. So I've made many mistakes, but if I was to drill it down to one thing, I think it's complacency. Particularly when you think that you have a robust structure and that no one can shake it and that the risks will be at bay. And I think that's when it really comes to hit you. You asked about challenges. I think
Yes.
the one challenge that I have experienced in my career is knowing when to contest and when to concede. Because when you're in-house counsel, that's a constant challenge. Some of the matters are so grave from a value perspective. You're dealing with large amounts. But then when you take other things into consideration, you may not particularly want to take a particular route. So it's that fight between conceding and contesting. That's one challenge, and it dogs me all the time. You have to apply a lot of judgment and you have to consider many things in order to pick one way or another, because that one way can really mean something great for the institution. Okay, but the other thing that is new that really causes huge challenges for me particularly is the weaponization of social media. So you see, right now we are all publishers. Yeah, we've been told we are now all publishers because we have the avenue to just go into a system and publish our views. And so our disputes are no longer those things that can be kept within the parties concerned. So anyone who has a dispute against you can quickly go onto Twitter and make it a global affair. The problem with that is you're dealing with reputational pressure on one hand, and you're dealing with the actual dispute on another. Yeah. And you've got to be very, very careful. Of course, you don't want to completely ignore the fact that reputational issues are burning and boiling, but you actually have a dispute in hand, and you've got to be level-headed enough and sober enough not to be drawn by this sensation and just stick to the dispute. It's a very difficult thing. When people are hitting at you reputationally, that's the fire that's burning more than the dispute itself. So if you're asking me, what's the challenge for in-house counsel right now? And many people who work in institutions know, nobody wants bad press, but bad press is now used it is weaponized, and it is the platform that's being promoted for dispute resolution. So we need to find mechanisms to resolve our matters in that kind of environment, and it's a huge challenge. The third one I want to point out is our general environment. We're working in an environment where fraud thrives and is changing as quickly as other aspects of our business environment. So fraudsters are smart people, and they use professionals like us. And it becomes extremely difficult to navigate and resolve disputes in an environment where fraud is thriving the way it is, but worse still, professionals are being used to progress the intentions of fraudsters. It's a difficult environment, and it's quite a new challenge for counsel, I think, both in-house and external.
Oh, thank you. Well, you've really, really, really hit the nail hard on that, telling us about the fighting, both internally and externally, bad press. And when you speak about bad press, you made me think about the internal department that you have. And I imagine the standard legal department has more than 5 lawyers. And you also have relationships in there. How do you handle the relationships of the team to rally the team to think the way you do in your place as head legal, but also to avoid any bad press that could be imparted on the general team?
Brian, it's something I think about every day, and I don't think I've cracked it yet. And I'm by no means the SI unit in this, because leading a team is difficult, especially in a dynamic environment. But what I know for sure is that we have very competent people in the bank. And that's where it starts. It starts with a very good set of professionals. That's number one. The second thing that's important, and I strive to practice every day, is open leadership. You know, I don't consider myself the head or anybody else a tail. We try and have as flat a structure as possible, where the title means nothing. It's really just one aspect, because I have learned that huge value comes from everywhere. And yes, you can be promoted and be called senior this or that, but actual value, especially when you are faced with significant risk, can come from quite unexpected places. So I try to run a flat structure where people are not overly concerned about who they are. We are informal as much as possible. I try and make myself available to everybody, including the admin staff, because I know that everybody really has a huge part to play in what we're trying to achieve. And I can't just look at everybody through the lens of their titles or their qualifications. People have unique abilities that they bring to a task, and that's what I try and sieve out every day. So we are very informal. Everybody calls me Candy. I try and ask them to criticize me every time I'm not making sense. And, they do. Sometimes they tell me, Candy, you're not making sense. And that's the kind of environment that I want to develop, because honestly, the value comes from an open and an open conversation and an enabling environment, and not just from your qualifications and where you went to school and things like that. So it's having a flat structure where people are happy to contribute and bring their talent to bear.
Wow. Very, very helpful. And I want to confirm that, yes, you are making sense. Candy, you are making sense. I would have told you if people are not understanding what you're saying. Talking about the departments, one of the questions that has come in is that the legal department is often seen as one that does not have any financial value for the company, and they won't be considered for bonuses or anything of the sort. How do you go about that in your experience?
That's a policy decision. That's a policy decision. I mean, in the institution that I'm in, I have a budget and I account for that budget. And if I make losses, I need to account. Yeah, so it really, I think that depends on how you're structured as an institution. But if you are in an institution that doesn't have a cost center, and that's what we call it, a real budget and financial responsibilities, then make a case for it. Remember, I said in the beginning, people like to put us in a box because they think our value is limited. We need to put our hand up and say, we are more than just what you see. We are more than people that interpret clauses. We actually bring value. Think about making your way into the strategy conversation or making your way into the risk conversation. People will begin to see the lawyer plus. And the moment they start to see the lawyer plus, then you can start making a case for more autonomy, for financial independence and accountability, yeah? And you can make a case for sharing in the pie. But before you do that, before you demonstrate your value, it's going to be very difficult. But believe me, I have been a victim of it. People put you in a box. You need to climb out of that box and demonstrate your value. Tomorrow or Monday, knock at that door and say, you know what? I want to be part of this meeting. I hear you're discussing strategy. It will really help me to understand your strategy so that I can advise you better. And before you know it, you're in the room and the meeting is not going to start until you're there. It will happen. I have seen it happen. I have actually lived this transition and I can tell you, it happens. There are situations now where a meeting will not start until the lawyer's in the room. And that's where you want to be. That's where you want to be.
Wow, thank you. So basically what you're challenging us as lawyers is to always find our seat at the table of decision making, right?
Absolutely.
If it's a bad policy, to talk about the strategy, the business, to climb out of the box. So young lawyers, you have had it, climb out of the box of limiting your mind, but also the box of your different workspaces limiting you. Candy, as we prepare to end this session, I wanted you to talk about the private practice area and how easy it is to transition. I know you spoke about it briefly, and there are also questions that have come in regarding the academic qualification. Do you think an LLM, an MBA, speaking about business and strategy, is it a requirement in today's corporate world? Or is it something that is overemphasized? I don't know.
If I were to advise anyone who is developing their career right now, I would tell you that a law degree is a very superior degree. And these are just my view. And you can, I mean, you can disagree, but I find that the law degree is superior enough for the legal practice that you need for the future. And I'll say that because as lawyers, we're taught to find the law and interpret it, okay? So wherever that law will arise in the future, we know where to find it and interpret it. So you have the skill. So what skill don't you have? You don't have business skills, but you want to have a law firm that practices corporate and commercial. How are you going to do that? You want to advise, yes. How are you? No, you can't, because your legal lens is going to be limited. You're not going to understand the business pains that particular business is going through in order to tailor and make your advice more relevant. You're going to apply a one-size-fits-all kind of advisory approach when your business is either young or mature or transitioning or becoming agile. So I think a business degree is a wonderful complement to a legal degree because everything is business, okay? But in recent times, I've also come to understand that the other trainings in emerging areas like data is just so powerful. I mean, just imagine a lawyer that has legal qualifications, has a business degree, and understands the utilization of data, which, by the way, and I completely believe, is the new oil. That's such a powerful set of skills. So I would say, look at business in the future. What are the drivers? If you're going to advise business, don't think about advising business now. This landscape will be obsolete in 6 months. Think about what businesses are going to be, okay? Think about banks or financial institutions using supermarkets to serve your financial needs. Think about that world. Think about a virtual branch. Think about data as the driver for strategic decisions. And then give yourself the skills that you require. And I tell you, I don't think you need a whole host of legal degrees. You know the law. And when new laws come up, you will find a way and teach yourself how to manage those. But get these skills that make you a unique and relevant advisor. We need to remain relevant, guys. The business has moved on, and we're remaining behind because we think that the tunnel approach is what is required. It's not. We keep talking about T, being deep enough, but being broad enough to cover the needs of tomorrow. So that's what we need to be. We need to be T professionals. Yes, you're entrenched in your law and you understand your field, but you also have to understand an array of things that your client experiences and goes through and wants to experience and go through in order to be a relevant lawyer.
Wow. Wow, very, very profound. And hey, people are really, really liking, and there's some comments that have come in. And I want to pause here because I see that our time is really running out and I'm enjoying my chat with Candy. I mean, to get everyone else. But I now want to open it up to people that would like to ask Candy directly. So just raise your hand and then we'll ask you to speak. But there are questions that have come in, and it is really, really exciting. As a reminder, guys, Candy is here. She's available. Ask her. Maybe Candy, if as we wait for people that would wish to ask directly, do you have any final remarks that you want to pass on as to excel in the legal world, in the corporate world?
I think the final thing I would say is, if I was to wish for one thing, it would be to be young in these times. I would really do anything to be young in these times. These are the most exciting times.
Wow.
Yes, we have been through a pandemic, and that's difficult. We have been through loss as a society, as a people. But think about the opportunity that our continent has to skip so many stages of development and be at par with developed markets. And think about the role that the lawyer can play in accelerating that growth and development. I mean, who would have thought that I could order my tomatoes and potatoes on my phone and still sit at home and have them delivered? We're living in a world of endless possibility. And the only people who are not grasping that opportunity, because we want to do things in the way we did them, in the way LDC said, in the way the professor at the university said, is us. We're the only ones. Think about the pivoting that other professionals have done. Think about what the transition of the banker has been, from dishing out cash through a passbook. Do you remember passbooks? Brian, do you know about a passbook?
I do, but I only heard of it in stories.
So think about it. From a teller who used to, serve people by virtue of a passbook, is now training customers to apply for their own loans on their phones. These are exciting times. And if I was to wish for one thing, it's just to be young again so that I can find my niche in this excitement.
Wow. All right, thank you very much, Kandi. I see 2 hands have been raised, so I'm going to allow Brownie to talk. Brownie, please unmute. Yes, you can ask directly your question.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Madam Kandi, for the session and really hitting all the points. I'm in-house counsel for National Water. One of the things that I find is perturbing, or maybe is making me have a conflict, is how to maintain my litigation skills and drafting of court documents when most of the work is risk management and the chance to actually, like, external lawyers most times go out and go to court, but then the in-house is in. So how do you manage that? Yeah. Thank you.
Let me allow Luvega as well to ask. Luvega, you can unmute.
Thank you very much, admin. Thank you, Kandi. It has been an insightful session for us. I have only one question before you. Currently, I'm an MBA student at ISAMI, and as a former MBA student also, Ms. Kandi, what would you be your advice on the areas of emphasis for a young lawyer who wants to join the corporate world and currently is pursuing MBA? There are a number of sectors we are studying under there which are a bit corporate and in line with the law: corporate management, corporate governance, financial management, finance and international market, and several of them. I don't know what would be your advice for a young lawyer who wants to join the corporate world, basically banking and insurance. What would be your advice of the areas of emphasis, maybe to emphasize on for his or her MBA? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kandi. We'll just take one more and then you could answer those. Cynthia, could you please unmute Cynthia Ampeiwe? Yes, Cynthia, are you there? Okay, I see she's unmuted, but she's not speaking. We'll just take one more from Mugabe.
Brian, I had seen the president's hand up. I don't know if you had seen her hand.
My apologies. I will be kind, serious, Chivoko. Madam President, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to greet everybody, recognize the chairperson of the Young Lawyers Committee, our MC Brian, and the committee members present, any council members present, and our guest of honor, Madam Kandi Wekesa. First of all, I'll begin by thanking you so much. You've been a mentor of mine since I was in S1. You might not know this. You used to come to Namagunga almost actually every year. You used to come and do the career guidance week, and you're one of the regulars. And I remember the time she was a DJ, she had very interesting hairstyles, and would look at her and wonder how she could be a lawyer and she could be this funky DJ who had the coolest, sexiest voice on TV, on radio, and then she could look like that. And then all our very, very uptight headmistresses and nuns thought very highly of her at the same time. So I think I have seen you over the years endearing yourself to all sorts of stakeholders with all sorts of interests. And I think that that is the one thing that has kept you relevant in all the sectors that you worked in. So how do you, and I'm asking this now, I know it's unfair to ask as a president, but I also want it to be the last time I speak, because I was supposed to say thank you. The reason I put up my hand is because I'm going into another meeting and I didn't want to miss this. But my question is, and I hope that you'll be able to share this, what is the importance of flexibility, of flexibility in your role your ability to learn more on how it has an open mind, so that when you're thrown into a role as a young lawyer, or you're given opportunities, or maybe even your role these days, organizations are rethinking a lot of things because of COVID. So they might decide that they want to close down the legal department, but maybe there's an opening in compliance, or in audit, or in, you know. So what are you advising the lawyer of today to think like, that has gotten you? Because I've seen you, and you are way ahead of us. I mean, time wise, not age wise, but as in the way you behaved and the way you embraced challenges and change, for me, inspired me. And I'm proud to say that I was also a DJ at some point. So anyway, so you have two DJs, yeah, two who are in-house. Maybe that's a calling for in-house counsel.
Yes.
So, but please expound on that. But I also want to say and report you to all the people here that it is because of Candy that the annual law conference has been sponsored by Stanbic for the last 3-4 years. And it's because of Candy that we've always found a powerful mentor when it comes to corporate governance. I think for me, my journey in corporate governance has been because of the SOTIC job. I think this was, for me, I was more excited about Candy and all the people that I've seen, because up to now, she is still trend setting, you know, and for me, I cannot get enough of her. So thank you, Candy. Please expound on that, because I think for me, that has been your magic. So share enough of it so that the young person here who maybe has the closed mind of coming out of LDC and thinking I need to just go into my pink files, you know, and read in the law library and, you know, go to the cage, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Emphasize for us, because I think that is where the magic is. But thank you so much. And all the best. Thank you so much, Mr. Kambaho. You're doing a fantastic job. I hope everyone is ready for the annual law conference. We're going to have Candy and more. We're going to have the IBA president. We're going to have speakers from all over the world. We are going to have speakers from Geneva, from international law firms. So if you're looking for the quality of Candy, in 2 days, we're going to have about 45 amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
People
Thank
from
you.
all over the world. Which one you will? So this is the only time we're doing virtual, and I know the Law Society will never pay for tickets for these people. So all the best, people. I had to put my Kalango, Brian. Don't judge me. See you.
No. Thank you, DJ Fiona. We look forward to having you at the annual conference. Candy, over to you.
Yeah, Madam President, thank you for your very kind words. And I'd just like to start with your question, because I realize you need to go off to another meeting. I see Mugabe's hand is up and Lubega's, and I will come to you in a minute, but just kindly enable me to answer what the president has asked and what is the importance of flexibility. So I told you, I came out of LDC. My dad had died. My mom had 6 children, and she was just a personal assistant. She didn't have a huge salary. And the point was for us to finish school and get out of the house quickly. So I was really desperate for income. And I was working, you know, in the law firm setup, like I told you, with just really the benefit of experience, but certainly not the benefit of you know, a good pay. And that's another thing that I'd like to come back for, you know, because I see young lawyers coming out of school and getting really good pay. And I'm thinking, wow, the days have changed. But that is when I decided to go into radio. And I want to use this as an example of flexibility. I knew nothing about radio, literally nothing. I didn't know what working a console was. I didn't know anything, but I was confident enough to understand that I need to equip myself with the level of confidence that's required to do this new task. And I decided to be flexible about it. So I did radio for 4 years. And why this is an important message is because that flexibility then became my testimony when I needed to demonstrate that I can work in a new industry and teach myself. Because when the Capital Markets Authority job came up, they asked me the law and I'd read the act. They asked me all sorts of things. What's your experience? And all that was easy. And then they asked me, what makes you think that you can come into a new sector and make it work? What is in you that you can demonstrate? And I said, I have worked in a new sector and I have managed. And when they asked me, what is that new sector? I said, it's radio. And radio at that time, by the way, the privatized radios were new. And so we were one of the first people, to be recruited, along with Rasta Rob MC and Christine Mahadri, etc. So, and I said, I went into a console. I was taught how to press the buttons. I taught myself how to have a radio presence. I taught myself fluidity. There was no training for presenters at that time. And therefore, if I can do that, I think I can do the same thing in this sector. And so if I hadn't demonstrated that flexibility, albeit in a different sector, I would not have been believable. And that's why I keep telling people, do it. I mean, see a new challenge and apply your mind to it. Be agile enough to give it a try, because that may be the testimony you need down the road. When they ask you, what makes you think you have it in you to do this? You will pick from all sorts of places. I'll tell you, one of the lawyers in my department had a very good interview. And I just thought, okay, so what distinguishes this guy from other people, And he says, I have attention to detail. And everybody says that, we all say we have attention to detail. And I said, so how can you demonstrate it? He says, I bake. I said, you bake? And he says, do you know what it means to bake? You need to be so exact and so precise about many things. If they say half a spoon of bicarbonate of soda, you can't say, let me just sprinkle in an extra spoon. And I thought, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I hired him. So I need to let you understand that flexibility and agility is everything in this new world, guys. It's everything. So shake off that stiff upper lip persona of the lawyers and make yourself available to learn new things and use those new things as a stepping stone for the challenges of tomorrow. So that's to the president's question. Brownie, you work for National Water. National Water is going nowhere, okay? We will always need water. However much technology we have, we'll always need water. You are the only one who understands how the water comes from its source to my mouth. You're the only one. You understand that chain. You're the only one who can adequately advise. If tomorrow National Water says we are going fully digital, we want to completely automate, we want to shut down all this physical presence and people will just consume on the basis of an app. You are the only person who can sit in that room and advise them. Why would you worry about drafting litigation papers? You are superior. You're the only person who has that knowledge. You're the only lawyer that can craft an app alongside the IT people that are relevant, that is relevant for us. You are in a powerful place. There is no lawyer who is going to come from chambers and do what you're doing. They don't understand the chain of events. So I wouldn't be sad if I were you. After all, tomorrow, these court documents will be drafted by a robot. So you're missing nothing. You're absolutely missing nothing, right? You're in the thick of it and you just need to grab the opportunity. Lubega, you're doing an MBA. That's a fantastic thing. Look at the business of the future and ask yourself, what will give me the edge? It will either be an angle in IT, an angle in data, in cybersecurity and cybercrime. It will either be in coding or it will be in strategy, but definitely also in finance. So if you do any of those things, or if you can combine a couple of those, you'll be a very powerful person, exceedingly powerful person. So right track, just look at what the oils of the future are, and data is definitely one of them, and start to make your way in that field. Okay. I hope I've answered those questions. I see Mugabe's hand is up.
Yes, Mugabe is the very last question that we'll have. I know we're supposed to end at 4. Could you just allow us a few minutes to wind up and then we'll be closing? Mugabe, Oscar, could you please unmute and ask the final question of the day? Mugabe, Oscar, you there? Anyway, while he arranges to unmute, I think I've just seen a question, Candy, in there, in the question and answer section. As a woman, and this is something that maybe we didn't talk about in detail, how have you managed to balance within the family and your growing career? Did you ever have to slow down at some point due to childbirth, raising children? And if so, how did you pick it up?
I've had to slow down many times.
Yeah.
I've had to slow down many times. I keep talking about my interview in CMA as the point at which I pivoted from being external counsel to internal, but I was 5 months pregnant when I did that interview. I was 5 months pregnant and I didn't even have money to buy a decent maternity dress. So I borrowed my mom's dress and I showed up with this oversized dress looking completely awkward. So yes, it has been difficult. I have 2 daughters. They are both grown now. They are both at university. So I thank God. But when they were younger, there were times that I needed to put in a little bit of work. But this is the point that I'd really like to make. Your work-life balance is a partnership. It's a partnership between you and your partner, your husband or your boyfriend, or whoever that significant other is. That's the partnership that needs to work. Not the lessening of your job, not a good boss, because we can't control that. The partnership that needs to work is between you and your husband, you and that person you live with. That's where the work-life balance is created. I was fortunate enough to marry a man who is exceedingly confident, and he did not find my own career a challenge. But more importantly, he actually mothered my daughters very much. In fact, I will tell you, throughout the time they were in primary school, the school didn't think that these kids had a mom because he was the one showing up for everything, for parent-teacher day, for sports day, for whatever, whatever. So you need to inculcate, you need to have that partnership at home. When one of you is having a career that's heavy, then the other needs to step in and vice versa. It's the only way it's going to work. The workload will never lessen. The boss's demands will never lessen. But if your partnership at home works, then you can find a reasonable balance. There will be times when you feel guilty. And there were many times when I felt guilty. And you step back and sort of take your children through a sensitive time. But what that means is that when you come back, you have to accelerate, because you may have missed some time. I told you about how I was a housewife for 2 years, okay? You wake up in the morning, you scrub the floors, you do the laundry, you cook dinner by lunchtime. I mean, everything is done. But the truth is that your career starts to take a hit a little bit, yeah? So when I came back, I needed to accelerate, and I needed to catch up and clear that ground, which I did. It's hard, but with a supportive partner, you can do it. I mean, you can do it. And children understand sometimes.
Wow. Thank you very much. DJ stroke, mother stroke, housewife stroke, Stanbic, head of corporate world. Thank you very much, Candy. It's been a joy. It's been an honor. I want to invite our president, our chairperson rather, Kenneth Chipalu, to give a vote of thanks. But also for everyone else still on the call, please comment in the chat section who you would like us to bring as a future mentor and why. This is an opportunity for us to touch base with them, to ask them, to have a leap into what their lives are like, but also to see how best we can approach them going forward to mentor us, to rub shoulders. Mr. Kenneth Chipalu, could you please give a vote of thanks, and then we shall close off now that it is 4 p.m.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much, Candy, for agreeing to talk to us today. I remember when I called you, you agreed without hesitation. And your talk has been insightful, and it has been informative, and it has been inspirational. I can't thank you enough. And I hope you can attend future events of young lawyers and inspire them more. We had agreed that Mercy will also say something in gratification of your talk. So I don't know whether Mercy, you are there?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Brian, for today's session, and very, very, very big thanks to you, Candy, for allowing to do this today. I was most excited to have you. I love your story. I love your story. I've listened to it more than once, and I was telling the team, we must have Candy. And true to it, I've enjoyed today's session. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your skill, your experience. And I think from you, we've had from the best. Today I've felt your passion for what you do, and I pray that it's rubbed on as many lawyers as possible, especially those doing things like you do. And what I hear from you today is, I think the slogan that Stanbic is using, it can be done. So that's a take home, really. It can be done no matter what, no matter where, no matter how. It's really a very relevant slogan. And another take home for me is to be a T professional, deep enough and wide enough. Those are my two take homes. But again, on behalf of the team, we're very glad that you could make time. We're thankful for the time you've given us. It validates what we are doing. And I'm very sure that everybody that has made time this afternoon has not wasted their last 1.5 hours. It's been very, very beneficial. So thank you again. We will do better in saying thank you, but for now, please accept our sincere gratitude for your time and for everything that you've shared. And to everybody that has attended, thank you. I hope it's been worth your time. Please look out for more. Do share the mentors that you want us to have and why. And the role of this platform is really to bring people like Candy closer to everybody else so that we can hear, because not everyone can have a minute of her time, but with sessions such as this, we definitely will hear from as many people of her caliber and more. So thank you very much to everybody, and a good afternoon, a pleasant weekend, and God bless you.
God bless. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much. And from me, DJ Brian, mentored by Candy. Till we meet again.